Karate is one of the most commonly used martial arts styles in fiction. Many types of media either use a real form of karate or create an unspecified martial arts style being called karate, even if the made-up style doesn't necessarily follow traditional karate moves. Karate itself comes from a variety of styles, with common attack methods relating to the empty hand, which is a phrase karate translates to. This includes attacks like knife hands and palm heel strikes, along with a myriad of stances that allow one to utilize punches and kicks in a defensive and offensive manner, which is a big simplification of karate's description. Fighting games are no exception to including karate with both legitimate and fictional aspects, so I'm going to look at the best karate practitioners in fighting games, whether they're accurate or not entirely, suggested by many viewers. These fighting game characters simply have to use a style that their game labels as karate, which means it could be a legitimate style or a fictional type of karate that still calls itself karate. In the end, it's all for fun, so the interpretation is open. Also, I'll take their overall attacks and backstories into account for ranking, since that adds to the fun. Now, let's get set for my top 10 karate fighting game characters. Number 10, Ryo Sakazaki from Art of Fighting and King of Fighters. Ryo uses a fictional style of karate known as Kyokugen Ryu Karate. While that was fun to say, initially his playstyle was one part traditional karate tactics and one part made-up moves. However, as the games went on, more karate-based attacks were added to his moveset. I've always viewed his Zanretsuken, the rapid punches, to be his version of the consecutive lunge punches seen in karate, only without going into a special stance before doing them. As you'll hear a lot on this list, karate focuses on going into different defensive stances before attacking, which Ryo does not do often. Though he added a more accurate karate stance in one of his eventual super move punches, and I love that he was given a simple parry in later games. Since karate involves self-defense enabled by a prepared stance, these simple parries made Ryo stand out more to me as a legitimate karate expert. They show his patience, which is vital with karate. And at the very least, you gotta admire the aggression in this man's classic karate chop. He also continued the legacy of this karate style, teaching it to Marco Rodriguez off-screen in Garo Mark of the Wolves, the game about the future generation of the SNK fighting game universe. So whether you consider him a basic or intricate character, he has surely shown us that he has mastered his craft. Number 9, Silva from Bariki 1 and King of Fighters. His name is German for silver, so he may be named after his hair color. I'd ask him to confirm that, but his constant state of rage and single red demon eye deter me from going near him. You do you, buddy. Originally, he was the final boss of Bariki 1, a 3D arena projectile-less fighting game in the lines of Virtua Fighter or Tekken. With no follow-ups to that game, Silva went silent until about a decade later, when he made his way over to King of Fighters 11 to wreak some havoc, and by havoc I mean become a playable mid-boss. The first few new things you may notice about him are that he's a 2D sprite now, he changed his name to English, being Silver, and his hair's a lot more flowy. However, all those details are insignificant to him compared to his strength, which you can now visually see in his attacks. I love the smear effects on his moves, like his heel smash and overhead swipes. It really drives in the force in which he drops the figurative hammer. Since his attack windup is generally pretty slow when getting into his karate stances, you actually have time to observe his proper technique when preparing a strike. That being said, don't just stare when he's doing that. Once he's in position, you better have prepared during that startup, since he's ready to cause a lot of damage. Number 8, the unnamed player in Karate Champ. I always talk about how Street Fighter was the landmark fighting game series, but let's give praise to the true original fighting game, Karate Champ. It may lack the extra pixels and frames of later fighting games, but the heart's there. I can see they tried to convey legitimate karate attacks, and I think they did a great job considering the technology they had in 1984. I even see some proper lunge punches mixed in, great form. The whole move list was on the arcade poster, and I think it's great that they could introduce so much variety to a game that was essentially the first of its kind, even allowing for a player versus player mode. While it's understandably not as elaborate as later fighting games, it's set the stage for an entire genre and used karate to do so. If you couldn't tell by the moves, then it makes sure you know by the imagery and the name of the game. Also, can we talk about its promotional material? The NES cover and the American arcade poster give you what you expect. Two guys in battle or ready for battle, nothing too exaggerated. But the Japanese poster shows the true potential of this game. It's a full 80s anime. I don't know if player 1 and 2 are having a friendly spar or if they're fighting for the love of this girl in the background. Then on the second page of the poster, there's a different girl in a bikini. Did I miss some hidden lore here, or do we need a dark dramatic reboot of this game to go into the story the original could not convey? Number 7. Jinpachi Mishima from Tekken. Mishima-style fighting karate is a fictional brand of karate that only members of the Mishima family from Tekken know. Despite not being real, it contains a lot of aspects from real karate. Just to name a few, Heihachi uses the stance low horse when preparing some of his iconic moves, along with using classic karate chops and open-handed attacks. Kazuya embraces more close-fisted techniques seen in Shotokan karate, along with showing the defensive nature of karate by prepping his stances to properly counter his offensive foe. And Jin also used this style of karate, but abandoned it starting in Tekken 4, though Devil Jin still has aspects of it. However, the source of this style leads back to Jinpachi, Heihachi's father. To show this, when Jinpachi became playable, he had a combination of famous attacks used by the other Mishimas. I ultimately chose him since Jinpachi taught Heihachi, who taught Kazuya and Jin. So no Jinpachi would mean Heihachi would have nothing to teach the other two, or he would have had to learn a martial art that doesn't produce electricity, like a normal person. On that topic, the electricity is what makes this legacy fighting style truly unique. I'm not sure how Jinpachi discovered the human body could do this, but it makes all these attacks look much cooler, most notably on the uppercuts, the Mishima's uppercut in style. One of the attacks is called Electric Wind God Fist. Did you have to combine that many cool words together? Though they could have given all of their attacks generic names, and Jinpachi and family would still look like a bunch of badasses with this karate. Number 6. Ryu, and by extension all the other Street Fighter Shotos, from Street Fighter. Shotokan karate utilizes strong stances to keep the fighter's balance and set up for defensive attacks that allow the user to block then counter, along with various other offensive attacks. However, Ryu and his Shoto peers use none of them. The three staple fighting game attacks, Hadoken, Shoryuken, and Tatsumaki Senpukyak, are clearly not Shotokan karate moves. They were moves that Capcom made up and just called Shotokan without any real explanation. They were like, we'll call it karate. People will just think it's cool that energy comes out of his hands. And indeed it was fun. So fun in fact that many more fighters adopted the style of Ryu and Ken, causing the fanbase to create their own nickname for their unique style of Shotokan. Every Street Fighter character that has the trio of iconic attacks, or at least variants of them in the case of Sakura or Goken, is referred to as a Shoto, which I feel kind of implies that this is an abbreviated version of Shotokan karate. Characters like Akuma have coined the term Ansatsuken, or Assassination Fist, to define their Shoto style moveset, and I find it to be a much more fitting blanket term for Shoto since it's a made-up martial art for the made-up attacks. That being said, the term Shoto has become such a staple of Street Fighter vernacular that I don't even associate Shoto characters with Shotokan karate. I just think of them as a variant on the jack-of-all-trades style that Ryu adopted. Street Fighter Shotos alone could get their own list. Despite the departure from karate, it would be disingenuous to say Ryu has no karate influence in his playstyle. His lesser-seen staple attacks, the collarbone breaker and the donkey kick, resemble actual karate techniques. In addition, some of his basic attacks have the karate influence that his fighting style name advertises. All in all, Ryu is an insanely iconic character who would top many other fighting game lists, but when comparing the details of his karate to other practitioners in fighting games, he deviates a bit too much for me to turn the other cheek at his real-life inaccuracies. Not that it stops anyone from having fun with him.
You win.
Number 5. Hitomi from Dead or Alive. Karate is a big part of Hitomi's backstory. Her father taught it to her, and she in turn taught it to Hayate when he lost all his memories and was known as Ein. Since Ein was playable one game before Hitomi, he was technically the first karate user in the series, but because Hitomi was the catalyst for every time karate was used in Dead or Alive, she gets the spot. Well, technically her dad would be the catalyst, but he's not playable, so Hitomi it is. I love the aggressive nature of her moveset while still having the mindset of self-defense that comes with practicing karate. Her moves are great for counter hits when opponents have holes in their offense. She can outspeed many opposing attacks on startup with proper timing and get full combo punishes. Or she can just let her opponent attack and trick him with the old-fashioned parry. She's a bit weaker than other characters on the roster, including Ein, who has a similar playstyle with stronger yet slower attacks. I prefer Hitomi over him though, since her speed and rushdown tactics allow you to hit buttons like a madman and overwhelm your foe with a combination of unpredictability and calculated strategy. As for why she's in the tournament, pretty standard reasons: proving her skills, raising money for her sick father, just getting invited because she's cool, nothing that puts her directly in danger of being pursued by the main villain. Plus, who needs some kind of dramatic conflict when Hitomi has the issue of starting a fight with Lei Feng because Lei Feng buys a cabbage that Hitomi wanted? Hitomi brings the plot lines that us, the viewers, can truly relate to. Number 4. Jin Kazama from Tekken. He gets a segment separate from the Mishima-style karate users because he let go of that style. Once Jin learned the evil truth of Heihachi and Kazuya, he washed his past of everything he could from that side of his family, starting with the fighting style. He trained at a small dojo in Australia between Tekken 3 and 4, specifically learning a karate style unaltered by the Mishima bloodline. That's quite the dedication to completely retrain yourself as an adult as if you were just a beginner. The game just refers to his new fighting style as straight up karate. However, real-life karate master Ryu Narushima did motion capture for Jin in Tekken 4, and he specializes in Kyokushin karate, so it's assumed that's the specific style of karate that Jin now follows. Everything about this moveset feels clean and accurate to the karate style. While you have some of the standard exaggerations that all Tekken characters have, like characters getting popped up from a single punch, Jin's animations don't show much embellishment compared to the rest of his family. He has the concise and non-elaborate motions of a man who wants to waste no time. The most fictional aspect to his moveset is he still has a bit of that lightning effect, but otherwise, this moveset mirrors exactly what you could see in a real-life karate match. My favorite part of his moveset is his mental alertness stance, where he does a little shimmy. It's a great mobility tool, and it has some useful attacks you can do out of it.
KO. You win.
Number 3. Jin Kujo from Virtua Fighter. I'm somewhat surprised it took Virtua Fighter until their 5th game to add a karate master. I've heard some people say Akira was the first karate practitioner in the series, but that misconception comes from the fact that he wears karate gi. He actually practices a style of kung fu. Jin, though, is the full-time, real-deal karate guy. He's also French, so I'm not sure if I'm actually supposed to pronounce his name as something like Jean, but I'm going to go with Jin since that's how I say it naturally. His backstory is that he's a brainwashed assassin for the nefarious J6 organization, and that's all we got on that front. Being the last new character added in Virtua Fighter 5, Sega seemed more focused on making his moveset fun and elaborate, which they succeeded at. To show how dedicated they were to making him a solid karate character, his name was allegedly just Karate during production. I guess his backstory really was on the back burner.
Yeah.
Stop patronizing me. The forward-moving stances of karate are built into his combos, and its defensive nature appears when you can hold or charge some of his attacks before going on the offensive, allowing you to play mind games with your foe. He's also great at throwing in some low and high attacks into combo strings to mix up his opponent. So come for the realistic karate and stay for the really nice hair. Number 2, Makoto from Street Fighter. Makoto uses the style of Rindokan Karate, which is a completely made-up name. However, her moves are the most accurate karate style attacks we've seen in Street Fighter. Each kick and punch closely resembles the stance and positioning used in karate. Many of them are visible in her target combos, such as the Oizuki or lunge punches, and Maigeri or front kick. You can also look to her special moves like her chargeable quick punch known as Hayate, which feels like an old-fashioned karate move with a fun exaggerated Street Fighter flair, zipping her across the stage. And she has a karate chop, so there's no arguing with the legitimacy of her karate now. Beyond causing pain, I love the other aspects of her character. She shows so much personality when in battle. First, her walk cycle. It's great. It's very slow because she's cautiously approaching or backing away from her foe. It shows the defensive and analytical nature of karate. And if you see an opportunity to move in, she can dash at like 5 times that speed, showing how calculating she is. She's not much of a talker in the arena. She'll say a few general lines, but with how intense and deep in thought she looks, it's very fitting that she's the silent type. Even the way she goes into a meditation-like pose when she wins feels very abrupt, as if she needs to prepare for the next battle as soon as the previous one ends. Part of it also feels like pure anger. Look at those eyebrows, but it's not anger. She's only out to promote her late father's dojo, so it's just a constant state of determination that fuels her. That being said, I love the feeling of rage in her super moves. They're only a few hits long, but the opponent's reaction to each strike makes it feel like her fists are made of iron. Plus, it's always fun when you can send someone many meters upwards with a single punch, along with when she yells, Seishu Zenju, Seishu Zengodan, Seishu... Makoto, how do you say it again? Thank you. Oh, and how do you do the move again? So for number 1, I was really having trouble deciding between any of the top 5. All of them have great moves and most of them have interesting backstories regarding their karate. In the end, I went for the character that had the most influence on others in his series and had a name that made me say, alright, this works. Number 1, Takuma, aka Mr. Karate from Art of Fighting and King of Fighters. Takuma is the veteran of the Kyokugen Ryu style of karate that Ryo uses, and that's no coincidence since Ryo is Takuma's son. Not only has he taught Ryo, but also his daughter and Ryo's sister Yuri and co-protagonist of Art of Fighting Robert Garcia. But beyond him being responsible for many of the karate users on the roster, he has an alter ego that declares his mastery. Donning a Tengu mask, he takes the persona of Mr. Karate. When you go with the naming scheme of putting Mr. in front of a noun, that automatically means you're the best at it, right? No, not always. He kept his identity hidden as Mr. Karate when he had to work as an enforcer for crime lord Geese Howard when Geese threatened to hurt his family. After reluctantly accepting, Takuma became feared as Mr. Karate. He was so feared that even the next in line after Geese, Mr. Big, kidnapped Takuma's daughter Yuri when Geese was away to make sure Takuma didn't pull any funny business. And that's the story of how we got the plot of the first Art of Fighting. Takuma never told Ryo he was Mr. Karate because when Ryo went to defeat all of Geese's goons, it meant Mr. Karate would be the only guy standing between Ryo and Yuri with Geese away. Of course, Takuma found this situation to be the perfect time to test Ryo's power since he knew Ryo would not hold back against this masked man that he thinks works for Geese. With the family reunited and Takuma free from Geese, he then tries to atone for his misdeeds in the second game by attempting to take down Mr. Big and Geese and then retiring. But King of Fighters happened afterwards and created an alternate timeline, so now he's back. Yay! The team of Takuma, Ryo, Robert, and later Yuri were all just going around promoting their dojo in these games. Nothing too fancy, but I like how it's a nice simple plotline for these guys who don't want any more trouble. Then Takuma retires again, but comes back whenever SNK realizes he hasn't been in a game for a while, so he's never truly too old for this. Occasionally, he'll come back as Mr. Karate to give himself an alternate moveset or just for a funny moment. Ryo is also taking the title from time to time, time, but he doesn't quite have that presence that Takuma has. In King of Fighters, Takuma generally pulls out Mr. Karate when he wants to be the eccentric master, and I think that's endearing that he essentially wants to be an anime character. Though the serious form of Mr. Karate is the one that we see playable, and it can clean house. Really, he can clean house with or without his persona, but I like a lot of the quirks they added to Mr. Karate in King of Fighters 13. My favorite moves are his counters and projectiles. The counter allows him to glide like Akuma when it works. That's just cool. And his energy projectiles are invisible, going above and beyond the already amazing one-handed projectiles. I always like to view those projectiles as him being so strong, the force of his punch pushes his opponent back at any distance. I also like his Zanretsu-ken in both forms. Takuma uses two hands emulating real-life lunge punches, but I never get tired of the one-handed version we see from Mr. Karate. All else I can say is the man is simply a badass and earned the title of Mr. Karate and the #1 spot on this list. Now, what did you think? With how common the style tends to be, I'm sure I missed some good choices, so let me know your favorite fighting game karate masters in the comments, whether they made this list or were accidentally left out in the cold. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.